My name is April Marrone, and I am an advisor with FDA Center for Devices and Radiological Health in what is the Total Product Lifecycle Advisory Program, also known as TAP. Thank you very much for letting me be here today to speak to you about this program, and I think it fits really well with some of the concepts that have already been spoken about this morning. So this slide basically shows the challenge that the medtech ecosystem is facing. Very simply put, medical devices in their development, they start with an idea, and if successful, they end up with reimbursement and then adoption, widespread adoption by patients and physicians. But we all know there's a lot of steps in between those two extremes, and those steps can be fairly siloed in the evidentiary needs by the different stakeholders that are involved in each step. And FDA is really the first opportunity for innovators to come and have evidence that's going to support that their device is going to be safe and effective and a potential feasible option for patients in areas where there is an unmet clinical need. Unfortunately, after devices get through the FDA, there's other stakeholders that need to have their needs addressed. So those are going to be your payers, your physicians, and your patients. And the evidence that was needed to get through the FDA is not always going to be the evidence that's going to satisfy their needs. And so there's this medical device valley of death, if you will, where a lot of technologies just simply can't make it to patients. And we do not think that that's a good use of everybody's time, is to have these technologies language there. So TAP is trying to address this challenge. We're trying to do this in a very really simplistic way, but hopefully meaningful. And the idea is that we bring all stakeholders involved in the medtech ecosystem of a device development to the table early on to have conversations with innovators and with each other to really understand what those evidence needs are going to be for technologies so that the innovators then can optimize those evidence collection strategies and increase their chance of success, but of course not sacrificing quality in the meantime. So I do just want to reorient everybody that I am with the Center for Devices and Radiological Health. I know really nothing about drugs, and so that's where we are in the org chart. And CDRH is divided as far as who actually does the regulatory review work. That is our Office of Product Evaluation and OPEC, Office of Product Evaluation and Quality. And there's 8 Office of Health Technologies in OPEC, and those are the folks that are actually doing the work of the FDA. And I bring this up because TAP is only operational in some of these OHTs at this time. Okay, so TAP is not in OPEC. We are organizationally separate. We are on the org chart in the Office of the Center Director. We are a relatively small group. I am a TAP advisor. My other colleagues who are TAP advisors have been brought in really from many areas out there in the ecosystem so that collectively we have that knowledge from idea to reimbursement and adoption. So we are trying to really have a very knowledgeable staff. And then our job is really, it's really great. My job is to establish relationships with all the players out there in the ecosystem and then help facilitate engagement among everybody. So engagement with our FDA staff, engagement with innovators, and then engagement with our non-FDA stakeholders, which we're calling the 3 Ps, the payers, patients, and providers, and then help innovators take that information and resolve it into a set of clinical and regulatory options. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can be involved in the TAP program. One is as an innovator, where we enroll on a device basis. So if you have a device that meets the criteria that's outlined on this slide here, you can voluntarily enroll in the TAP pilot, and you do get some benefits for doing that, such as increased engagement with FDA staff, and then the potential to engage with stakeholders in the ecosystem and benefit from those conversations. As has already been mentioned, this is not the only way to engage with the FDA if you're not able to enroll in TAP. If you have breakthrough designation, which is a requirement to get into TAP, you can also be eligible to do sprint discussions with the FDA. And if you're not in any other programs, but you're just developing a medical device, you can always speak to the FDA through our pre-submission program. The philosophy of the center in general is come often and come early. So we do culturally want to be speaking to innovators about how they're developing their devices to minimize that uncertainty and what data is needed to support FDA's regulatory decisions. But to focus a little bit more on TAP, so to be eligible, you do need the breakthrough device designation. I can speak a little bit more to what that is for anyone who's unfamiliar in the next slide. And then you do need to be under the jurisdiction of one of the offices where TAP is operational. So we're currently in the cardiovascular and then the physical medicine and neurological spaces, which I think covers most of what we're discussing here today. And then we are expanding on October 1 into ophthalmology and radiological health, and then in January to orthopedics. You then also need to be in the right phase of development to take advantage of TAP. So we have defined that in two ways in the middle column. One, you're early in your development, so you have not started that pivotal study. You have not initiated that study that is intended to support your FDA submission. And then we do also have a fairly arbitrary requirement where between that breakthrough designation, you cannot have engaged with the FDA via any of the other processes until you enroll in TAP. And then you do also need to be something that's only regulated by CDRH, so no combination products or biologics. You can only enroll one device per fiscal year, and we do that on a first come, first served basis until we meet a cap of the number of devices we can enroll in the fiscal year. So for the current fiscal year we're in, I believe we have about 13 spots available until the year turns over at the end of September. So just a refresher, that breakthrough designation, that is something that you come to the FDA in your request. The information you need to provide is a level of evidence commensurate with the developmental stage of your device, and it should support that there is a potential for your device to provide a more effective treatment or diagnosis of a life-threatening or irreversibly debilitating disease or condition. If you can show that and the FDA agrees, then you can have that designation and take advantage of TAP and or sprint discussions if you're in TAP and engage with TAP. And then there are 4 other kind of sub-criteria, but I always argue it's really hard to not meet some of those criteria if you meet that first criteria. Okay, so the other way to engage through TAP is to be a stakeholder. So our innovators are coming not only with regulatory questions, but they're coming with commercialization questions. So they seek input across topics that are really outside of FDA's purview and knowledge. So we do rely heavily on collaborators to work with the FDA and to work with industry to help resolve some of those questions. And those can be in kind of 3 larger buckets. So your evidence portfolio, so what is that evidence needed to address you as a stakeholder? Reimbursement obviously is a very big topic of discussion. Some innovators have questions about how can I get reimbursed? What is a feasible strategy? Others have kind of resolved what they want to do strategically, but they're unsure of like what is the level of evidence that would be needed to support this strategy. So we do encourage conversations along that line. And then of course, these are newer technologies. So adoption of technologies into clinical practice, adoption by patients, that this is an option that they want in their healthcare paradigm, or even decisions by healthcare systems or hospitals to purchase these newer technologies are questions that our innovators can come with. So we are building out our network of how we collaborate with organizations across the ecosystem. We kind of bucket them as payers, patients, and providers. But I do want to, say we are building out our relationships with our federal partners, such as NIH. I think it's already been attested to this morning that there's a lot of relationships already existing between FDA and NIH, but we are building that out even more with TAP. Because one of the things that we want to do is we want to understand how decisions are made by everybody in the ecosystem, and we want others to understand how FDA makes decisions. So that way we can really help understand what is the need to get stuff to patients. Okay, so I know we're running short on time, so I'm kind of speed talking a little bit here. So this is my final slide. I mean, really, we're just trying to make engagement with CDRH even better. We think we've already done a pretty, done a lot of efforts towards engaging with industry thus far, but TAP is just another tool to be able to do that. And we really just want innovators to understand what they're going to need to do to get their technologies to that inline, because if they know what they're facing, then they can make those strategic decisions to really mitigate that risk as they travel down that pathway. Okay, so I'm April Marrone. I have an email address. We also have a TAP pilot webpage that gives a lot more information about what we're doing and where we're at and updating the status. And we also have a program mailbox that will ultimately end up with me if you send something there, but others will get it as well. And of course, I'm just one person in a larger TAP team that are shown here. And that is what I have. I'm more than happy to take questions later in the day or have discussions, but thank you very much.